Good evening everyone. I am Nitika and I welcome you all in the series of Topic of the Week on our YouTube channel Hitbullseye. So today we are going to discuss the Prime Minister's visit to the European nations. So this 3-day visit started from Germany to Denmark and ended to France. So we are going to cover this topic in two parts. One, as an Indian Prime Minister's visit to these three nations, and second part will be on the India Nordic Nations Summit. So let's get started. So in this summit, the first country that Indian Prime Minister visited was Germany. Germany, with the capital of Berlin and currency euro, is currently the third largest in terms of purchase power parity and the fourth largest economy in terms of nominal GDP. It is also the world's third largest exporter and importer of goods, as of course we know that Germany is leading in the field of industrial and scientific advancements. Marking its presence in the globe, it is a key member of the United Nations, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the G7, the G20 and the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. It has the third greatest number of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. So please do cover these important organizations as they mark the great presence in any competitive exams. After this, let's focus on India-Germany relations. So India-Germany relations, it dates back to the Second World War, when India was one of the first countries to end the state of the war with the Germany in 1951 and one of the countries to recognize Germany as the Federal Republic of Germany. As the Federal Republic of Germany. So of course India and Germany, they have a strategic partnership ever since May 2000 and it has been strengthened with the launch of the intergovernmental consultations back in the year 2013 and in the year 2011. So India is amongst a select group of countries with which the Germany has such a dialogue mechanism, right? So of course, if we talk about India and Germany's economic relations, Germany cooperates India to the tune of 1.3 billion euros and the 90% of this amount is spent to fight the climate change, the environmental policy and saving our natural resources. Along with this, if we talk about the India's exports to the Germany, we count the textiles, the yarns, the apparels, chemical goods, and on the other hand, the Germany's major exports to India are the industrial goods. Of course, we talk about the G4, wherein India, Brazil, Japan and Germany, they are the members of G4. And this organization or these group of countries are basically the ones which are seeking the permanent membership in the United Nations Security Council. Currently, the United Nations Security Council has 5 permanent members. They are Russia, USA, France, China and the last we have is the United Kingdom, right? So, speaking of the current Prime Minister's visit to Germany, it holds a great significance amidst the ongoing tensions between Russia and Ukraine. So, a series of total 9 agreements have been signed between the nations, and this includes the joint declaration, on the green and sustainable development. Very important part. So for this agreement, the Germany has already agreed to give India an advance payment of 10 billion euros on additional assistant developmental activities. So now continuing with the 5 reasons why this visit was so important for India as well as Germany. So continuing with the first, India's visit to Germany came after Germany's intensive and aggressive efforts to intensify the engagements in the Indo-Pacific region amidst the China's assertiveness, which is why even in January 2022, the Indian Foreign Secretary and the German's Navy Chief even held a discussion on maritime security cooperation, which is why this meeting is yet to be happen. The second one is trade. Of course, we know that Germany is India's largest trading partner in Europe with over $21 billion hold on to the trade, which is why this visit also promises a bilateral strengthened trade with Germany. The third one is India and Germany, they are already looking forward to strengthen the post-COVID economic recovery, and they are banking upon each other on this strategic partnership for furthering their commercial ties. The next is diaspora factor. Germany is home to a thriving diaspora of over 2 lakh. This continent itself is holding over 1 million persons of Indian origin, and Germany is holding a significant proportion, which is why this visit is quite fruitful. Last but not the least, the Ukraine factor. Of course, Germany is holding a strong stance against Russia, but India is maintaining a balance between their statements and their statements in how they are portraying to the world for the Ukraine and Russia matter. But now is the time that New Delhi and Berlin will have to exchange some strategic notes on this matter. So that was all about the India-Germany talk. Moving on to the next day visit to Denmark. So first let's start with the Denmark nation. Denmark, with the capital of Copenhagen and currency Danish krone, Denmark is a highly developed country with a high standard of living. So Denmark, as we all know, is currently ranking atop in many international charts if we talk about LGBT equality, civic liberties, democratic values, or even education and healthcare sector. Speaking of India's relations with Denmark, so the first contact between the two can be taken back in 17th century when a Danish colony was established in 1620 at Tranquebar, which is now located in Tamil Nadu. The first diplomatic tie was established in the year 1949. So after that, in 1957, when the then Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, he paid his first visit in Denmark, it was then which laid the foundation stone of a friendly relationship between India and Denmark. So currently, India's major exports to Denmark are mostly textiles, yarns and apparels. On the contrary, the Danish exports accounts for organic chemicals and industrial items. The India and Denmark partnership, it strengthened further in the year 2020 September, when the nations have signed the Green Strategic Partnership. Now, what is this Green Strategic Partnership? It is a cooperation between the nations in the areas of environment, trade, science and tech, environmental policies, and climate change. So further, these two countries have decided to extend the Green Strategic Partnership in the areas of health and agricultural sectors also. So this was a brief about the India-Denmark relations. After this, we will also discuss the new meeting assignments or new meeting agreements which they have recently signed up. So India has signed a series of new agreements with the Denmark, in which the joint declaration of intent, or what we call as an MOU or joint declaration, is important. So I'm just writing it down here. So this joint declaration was based on the migration and mobility. Second, several memorandum of understandings on cooperation have been signed in the areas of value education, sustainable development, science and tech, and many other areas. During this visit, Indian Prime Minister also attended the India-Nordic Summit. This summit focused on the post-pandemic economic recovery, climate change, renewable energy, and the evolving global security scenario. The first India-Nordic Summit was held in Stockholm back in the year 2018. During this summit, the Indian Prime Minister invited several Nordic companies for investing in the blue economy sector, especially in the Sagarmala project. Sagarmala project is a flagship program under the Ministry of Shipping. So this is basically to promote the port-led development, which is through harnessing the India's long 7,500 kilometers coastline. This project was approved by Union Cabinet in the year 2015. After this, even Nordic nations have given or extended their support for India's permanent membership of a reformed and an expanded United Nations Security Council. So this is also important for us, as currently we are taking the votes of several nations who can actually positively vote for us as a candidature for a permanent membership in the United Nations Security Councils. So this India-Nordic Summit, by and large, very important for Indian economy as well, because these Nordic nations, they are currently ranking atop in many HDI, in many human development indicators. For example, in education, in healthcare, even in the standard of living, in the happiness reports. So wherever you see, these Nordic nations are atop, or they are mostly in the top 30s, right? So picking up the few highlights of this summit, Indian Prime Minister have had bilateral talks with these nations as well. So picking up first with India and Norway. So Indian Prime Minister asserted that Norway is a key pillar of India's recently announced Arctic policy. Of course, India's Arctic policy is quite a key program. It's a flagship program in the Arctic region, because we are now strengthening our maritime position across the globe. Then next, India and Denmark, they agreed to further strengthen the green strategic partnership with a focus on green hydrogen, renewable energy, and wastewater management, right? Then moving ahead with India and Iceland. So these two countries have tied up for the sectors of geothermal energy, blue economy, Arctic, renewable energy, fisheries, food processing, education, including digital universities and culture. Next, talking about India and Sweden. So both the countries, they have appreciated the expanding scope of the jointly launched leadership group on the industry transition initiative. This initiative was launched in the year 2019 during the United Nations Climate Action Program. So this is basically to guide those industries which are the heavy greenhouse gas emitting industries to transform themselves to the low carbon structure, right? And speaking of this joint action plan, so both the countries have reiterated the joint action plan which was earlier signed in the year 2018 to give each other, to support each other in the areas of education, in the areas of science and tech, even for trade, for investment and for the environmental and climate change. So lastly, we are picking up India and Finland. So both the governments have tied up in the fields of new and emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, future mobile technologies, clean technologies and smart grids. So during the summit, the Indian Prime Minister also invited the Finnish companies to tie up with the Indian companies or to take benefits of India's business environment. So that is all related to the India-Nordic Summit and the bilateral talks with these Nordic nations. So moving on to the last leg of this visit, that is India's Prime Minister visit to the France. So France, with the capital of Paris and currency euro, it is a developed nation with the world's 7th largest economy in terms of nominal GDP and 9th largest by the purchase power parity. So it hosts the 5th largest number of UNESCO World Heritage Sites and it is currently the world's leading tourist destination. Of course, when we talk about France, it is currently ranking atop in many international ranking charts. For example, education, healthcare and even tourism. If we talk about, then as an we can take a call on the economy sector also. Besides this, France is a topping in the leading industrial edge as well, right? So talking about India's France relations, so both the nations have centuries old relation wherein we have seen that France has entered the Indian subcontinent as a colonial power. However, for the first time in the year 1947 that the nations have tied up a diplomatic relations with each other, right? So later on, even we have seen that in 1998, it was, France was one of the countries in the Western economy to sign a strategic partnership with India. And it was also one of the countries which was quite positive and affirmative about India's nuclear power strategy and even nuclear weapons. Dates back to 1998 when the world or mostly all the Western countries, they were quite being negative about India launching or test firing its nuclear weapons. So France was also one of the very few countries to support India every now and then. So speaking of India-France relations over the period of time, So firstly, we will discuss the institutional dialogue. As we know that India and France have a range of institutional dialogue. For example, India-France dialogue, strategic dialogue, which takes place between the national security advisors from both the sides. Then second, defense cooperation. So the three services between the armies and the navies and air forces of the three sides. For example, we have exercise Shakti, which is an army exercise of the nations. Then we have Garud, which is an air force exercise between the nations. And lastly, we have Varun exercise, which is a naval exercise between the nations, right? So even we know the most famous Rafale deal was signed between India and France. Then next, as far as the space cooperation is concerned, India's ISRO and the France CNES, they share strong bond from the last 50 years. So India and France have signed an agreement for the cooperation on the Gaganyaan also. Gaganyaan mission, very famous one. So next we talk about the economic cooperation between India and France. So even according to the agreement, a landmark agreement has been signed with France. India has signed this. So it was according to which France will construct nearly 6 European pressurized reactors of 1650 kilowatts, and it will be implemented in an expedited manner, which will be in the Jaitapur nuclear power project, right? So of course, India and France, they are sharing strong ties as far as the economic cooperation, and they both are standing along with each other in combating the climate change. And we know that India and France, they started the International Solar Alliance also, that is to promote the renewable source of energy. That is one very important part, and both share strong cultural ties with each other, right? So now next, speaking of the significance of this meeting, so the visit comes during the French presidency of the European Union, which coincides with the 75 years of the diplomatic relations between India and France. So of course, Modi ji's visit is 5th in number after the August 2019, 2017, 2015 and the same year in April and November, right? So a range of bilateral issues including the defense, space, civil nuclear cooperation and people-to-people linkages, as well as the regional and global issues were discussed during this visit. So that is all for today relating to the PM's visit to these European nations, and definitely these visits are important if we talk about several competitive exams. The small details of these visits, when, where and how they have happened, the name of the agreements, the areas of cooperation. So these are some of the key points which you need to memorize during your exam. So that is all for today, all of you. So I hope you like the content and it is quite informative for all of you. If you really like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And do share this video with your friends so that they can also get some benefits from this video itself. So thank you so much. Bidding adieu.